Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
The following is independently produced programming. The views and opinions expressed are those of the producers and do not reflect the views and opinions of Falls Area Community Television, our staff, or board of directors.
Secrets in the shadows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret cracked beneath the undertone. Honest stories hidden in the dust. On this long road, in the truth we trust.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. We're going to talk about some of the things that are affecting people in the United States right now. And since some of this stuff will be the result of actions by the president, I will admit, just like a number of other people admit, but not everybody, Donald Trump, when it comes to people and getting people going, he's a master at it. Plain and simple, he has the ability to manipulate people, and people say, thank you. Thank you for looking out for me. That's a rare commodity. He goes in, he can manipulate people, he can tell people what they want to hear, and he can reinforce things that they don't want to hear or belief they have. And for the longest time, when you talk about reparations for slavery, and they're going, yeah, this is the result of 300 years of slavery, or this or that, people would say, hey, that's my great-great-grandfather, or that was other people. So I'm just barely making it. You know, why am I responsible for that? Well, that is a really valid question. Because if we go back in history, a lot of people, businesses did not take care of people. They used and abused. When they ran out of one group of people, they would go in and import more and more foreigners to fill the factories, build the railroads, work the canals. And America has a long history of taking care, letting a few people, few groups, whether it was Henry Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie. Yes, some of them took their wealth and gave it back to the communities. Others kept their wealth, passed it on to their families. But a lot of them got their wealth by destroying other companies, taking advantage of their workers, hiring strike breakers and stuff, and in certain cases, have the federal government send in troops to break strikes or to ensure that the manufacturer or the industry that was involved was able to keep producing. And then what we do after we got the media involved, and the media used to be the old journalists who would say, okay, we got to do this. Oh, we got to invade Cuba because the Spanish people are raping and taking advantage of the Cubans. And so they would come up with stories left and right. And then Smedley Butler, who had spent a lot of time, United Marine Corps General, a lot of time in Central America, fighting a lot of wars to benefit the American Banana Company. And he got in trouble when he said, hey, you know what? Basically, the business of the military is business. The military is sent to places to ensure, maximize profit for American businesses, whether it was Haiti or Guatemala or Honduras or different names that were when they were still colonies or brand new countries. So you're not going to find it in your kids' history books. You're not going to find it a lot. Talk about it. You have to go and search it on your own. Up until World War II, look at American society. For the average American, society really sucked. It was to get by. Your kids were sent to school just to get educated, just enough to work in factories. Each communities, they said, oh, what's my factory? Okay, I'm in Claremont, I'm in Manchester, I'm in Fall River. You name the place, Lowell, down in South Carolina, North Carolina, okay. Who was paying a lot of the school tax? It was businesses. Who put people on the school board and the city council and stuff? Businesses. Okay, even in Keene, look back in Keene and see how many times someone who was working for Kingsbury was on the school board or the city council. Okay, one of the goals was to lower the taxes as much as possible, but when they're on the city council and stuff, to come up with things that were advantageous to them. And the other side was to make sure you had people who could come in and work at the factory for the next 30, 40 years of their life, retire and die. So that was going on. Then we had World War II. Basically, the United States became the industrial hub of the world. We didn't have anybody destroying or attacking us. Yeah, there was a little few here and there, but we didn't have any damage. People were making money. We started the war with about 30% unemployment. Then we take 12 to 16 million men. A lot of them have 4th, 6th, 8th grade education. My mother's husband, who died, Vinny, or Big Vinny as we called him, he had a 4th grade education. He was in the Army, he was a cook, and he was there at the Battle of the Bulge. Okay? I've been helping a lot of veterans, and I look at Vietnam. A lot of them had 9th, 10th grade educations. And so then we put women to work, and they were able to make money. But the war did not put women to work. Look at the factories where women were working before the war in the 1800s and 1900s. What World War II did was put a lot of high school graduate women to work, giving them the ability to make money. So after the war was over, United States was faced with, holy crap, we got 16 million guys coming back. What are we going to do with these 16 million guys? Oh, we'll have the GI Bill, we'll have different things. Holy crap, 16 million guys. They're producing babies left and right. Oh, we'll give VA loans. We'll have 11 villages, 900 square feet. Okay, if you study American history on your own, from 1946 to 1973, where the American worker, because there was a shortage of skilled workers, companies gave them pension plans. Company gave them medical plans. Even when they retired, the medical plan was coming. And around 1973, it goes, you know what? We're spending too much money on our employees and they're having effect on our profit margins. Okay? So how do we handle that? Companies started doing away with pension plans. Then companies started doing with healthcare plans. So they would say, hey, you know what? So you work the TIC-C2, we may give you healthcare for 3 more years, but as soon as you turn 65, you lose your healthcare. Then companies would say, hey, you know what? Let's go bankrupt. And if we go bankrupt, the federal government will assume responsibility for our pension plan and maybe pay the people 60 cents on the dollar. Then companies go, you know what? We can send businesses Japan and South Korea, and we can do it real cheap. Places like Nike says, wait a minute, it's too expensive to build or make shoes in the United States, so we'll send them to South Korea. And then the company started making major profits. American workers were laid off. Then they go and say, you know what? Let's do away with voc tech. Why do we want to do away with voc tech, where people could come out of high school as machinists, carpenters, or things like that? So the powers to be says, that is really insulting to a lot of kids. You know what? You can't track kids. You must give every kid the opportunity to go into college prep. Well, not every kid is going to do well in college prep. So we started graduating kids that couldn't read, couldn't write, and had no technical or business or a marketable thing. Because you don't have to be a 4.0 student to be a great carpenter or a plumber or electrician. But we'll keep all these kids and like being on a school board, and it really frustrated me when they get up and says, well, 72% of our kids are going on to college. And when the number started falling, we'll add the people that's going into the military into that number. So if 72% of the kids are going to college, but 72% of the kids can't read at grade level, so we are now sending kids that can't even compete, make the standard at high school, but maybe on the honor roll, and we send them to college. But they weren't doing well. Oh, that's because they can't test well. Hey, so we have gone in and set up it that way. Okay. And in economics, I've talked about it before. Instead of a curve, we have a K. The people on the top part of the K, the 20%, they're doing extremely well. If their kids want to go to a top-notch vocal school, they make sure, because in Massachusetts, California, and some of the places, they have really good vo-tech schools, but you got to test to get in. I have a niece. She went to school, got out as an LPN. And she started at I think $22 an hour. Got a job and started at that. She didn't have to go to community college or anything like that to pay all that money to do it. Bingo. My other nephew, he came out as a sheet metalist. Bingo. Because of his hours and everything, he could have been accepted right into the union. Big pay, big benefits. But so coming today is no different than the Gilded Age before the Great Depression. And even during the Great Depression, if you were up on the top of the K, you weren't doing too bad. But if you were on the bottom of the K, especially the 30% who were unemployed, had no money, whatever, you were screwed. Your day-to-day existence was always at risk. No different than a lot of people today. A lot of people under the K have no idea what the future is going to hold. They're living day to day, and hopefully something won't go wrong. That is a shitty way to, sorry about that. That is a crappy way to be forced to live in a wealthy country like the United States. In a country where we take the top 10 money, wealth, who have over $1 trillion between them. And you know what? They would not have that money without the federal government benefiting them, because there is no such thing as free capitalism. Capitalism is rigged, and the person or the thing that's doing the rigging is the federal government. You ever wonder why these great investors, these great money managers, financier and things like that don't get into politics? Because they understand it is cheaper to buy people's votes than it is to try to work with these people, the elected. When I was in the State House, I was a registered Democrat, and they had a little thing is when they had these different conferences and stuff like that, and they always left money there for one Democrat to go. So I took advantage of it. And I remember going once down to Hilton Head in South Carolina. And one night, they got this rule. They can't give you a meal that costs more than 25 bucks. So, you can get 3 meals in a day that cost less than 25 bucks. You just have to listen to a few speeches. Okay? But at night, there it is, looking around, big table up front, all kind of booze that you want. No cheap stuff, all good stuff. You could go up. Then they had these young ladies, not very old, 18, 19. Some look younger, but I would say 18, 19, 20. And walking around, not in a manner that I would like my daughter to walk around, you know, talking to the old fogies, state reps from New Hampshire and other places. And it was just amazing to watch. You get a pretty young girl, not too much clothing on, and you give these state reps and state senators all this free booze, and you go around speaking to them, bingo. You've got them. You bought them. You own them. And the thing is, they just sell themselves so cheaply. That's why these other people up here, the real people, do not get into politics. The most qualified people to run the government and things like that do not get into politics because it is a big drop-off. And because of that, we get guys like Trump. We get guys like Biden. We get guys like Baby Bush. Because people, Biden and Bush are going out there because, oh yeah, we can control them. Cheney and his boys took care of Baby Bush. Cheney and Rumsfeld get us into wars. You know, Biden, twice he ran for the nomination. Twice he quit. One was for plagiarism and stuff. And so that's what we get. Okay? So getting back to Donald Trump, he picked up what President Johnson said years ago. People ask President Johnson, how do you get all these people, these poor people and all these to vote for you? He says it's simple. You got to make these people believe they're not on the bottom. There is always someone lower than them. So if you're a white guy down south and you don't have indoor plumbing or electricity and you don't have glass windows, I can tell you when I was stationed in South Carolina in 85 to 88, there were plenty of places like that in Western South Carolina. Okay. You got to think there's someone below them. And so what happened is, if we take the people living at way at the bottom, all we have to do is make them believe that the Negro is below them and they will vote for us. go, well, you know what? Well, now, let's look at Donald Trump. The MAGA base is mainly rural and white. They think of the big cities as dens of iniquity, filled with people of color. Yet they're also conservative when it comes to deploying federal troops inside the nation. Some remember the use of federal troops to enforce integration of public schools in the South. So Trump is like, oh, sending people to D.C., sending people to Southern California. He's testing it. He's going to go, oh, man, can I do this? Because people down south still remember Little Rock. They still remember Eisenhower. They still remember Kennedy sending troops. They still remember George Wallace, governor of Alabama. No segregation. Segregation over my dead body. Okay. You know, some of the schools, segregation, the really push for segregation was only 50 years ago. When they tried to segregate schools, even in Boston, there's a famous picture of a guy who ran in, got the American flag with the eagle, and trying to stab a black man on the steps of the courthouse. The people that in Congress, Trump knows that there's a bunch of cowards in Congress. Most of the time, but many worry that when they're back in their states and districts, they feel the heat from constituents, both MAGA and non-MAGA. So here it is. Okay, what do? Oh, if I don't support Trump every time, he's going to ensure someone runs against me. But the people I represent are upset because they think I don't represent them. I'm just Trump's lap boy. So, Trump just recently wrote on his Truth Social, I get it, it's really playing words, that trillions of dollars are being taken in on tariffs. Wrong, wrong, wrong. He's saying that tariffs has not caused inflation or any other problem in America other than massive amounts of cash pouring into the Treasury coffers. So far, the U.S. Treasury this fiscal year, which ends this September, so February, March, April, May, June, July, August, so say 7 months, okay? But we got the other months. The United States has picked a grand total of $142 billion in tariffs in 10 and a half months. And it says, since Trump's tariffs in April have generated $96 billion in revenue, which comes to an annual increase of 273%. So right now, basically, when you take April, May, June, July, they're bringing in, on an average, about $22 billion a year. I mean, a month. But that's a far, even so, you say 22. So say you come up with $260 billion a year. where I went to school, to get to $1 trillion, that would be 4 years. The president says trillions and trillions are pouring in. The Treasury Secretary said he expects tariffs will generate $300 billion annually, noting the chance that could be higher in 2026. Tax Foundation projected Trump tariffs would raise about $2.5 trillion over the next decade. Well, the Treasury Secretary says $300 billion, so that would be $3 trillion over the next 10 years. The Tax Foundation, $2.5 trillion over the next 10 years. Committee for Responsible Federal Government says Trump's tariffs to generate $2 trillion to the U.S. economy domestic product by fiscal year 2034 if they continue. I don't know. So if I'm importing stuff and I have to pay 2.5 trillion, say you've got to pay $300 billion a year. How can you go and say that the businesses are going to absorb all that? How are you going to say and go, oh, China, we're going to put a 20% tariff on goods from China. So what's going to happen is China is going to work out a deal with an American company and say, you know what? Instead of me selling this to you for $1,000, I'm going to sell it to you for $900. So I will take a 10% cut off the product of my goods, and the American business would take, let's say aluminum gutters. Well, aluminum gutters are, say, $1,000, 20% tariff is $1,200. Okay, so now that's $200 extra. So out of the goodness of their heart, China is going to self-absorb $100, and the business guy is going to take $100 out of his profit to pay the federal government. How long do you think that's going to last? No price increase. I don't think it's going to last very long. And here's President Trump he says on his social media that Vietnam will pay the United States a 20% tariff on all goods that's sent into our territory and a 40% tariff on any shipping, which means China sends stuff to Vietnam and then Vietnam sends it to us. In return of the goodness of the Trump tariff, United States business will have total access to the Vietnam's market. Bingo. Whatever an American company wants to ship to Vietnam, Vietnam will not charge a single penny in tariff. 0 tariffs. He added that he thinks SUVs would be a wonderful addition to the various product lines in China. Oh, you know what the per capita income, it should be in Vietnam is? a little bit more than $15,000 a year. In India, a little bit more than $11,000 a year. Well, an SUV in the United States, you know, can easily cost a basic one with a little bit of stuff in it, 60,000 bucks. So the household income in, say, for the Keene area, depending which one you look at, say it comes out to about $60,000 a year. So if a person in Keene who wants to buy a $60,000 SUV, it's really a one-to-one thing, okay? But so to make it go, they would have to spread it out to maybe a 7-year loan. But now, if you send it to Vietnam at 60,000, that means someone who wants to buy an SUV would have to work for 4 years and put every single money they earn into buying an SUV. At $15,000 a year, you really don't have that much spare money to go out and buy big vehicles. So Vietnam says, hey, yeah, 0 tariffs, no big deal, because you don't have much to sell us, United States. And so we can still sell it to United States. United States puts a 20% tariff on it. Guess what? Vietnam does not pay the tariff. Once that container is dropped off on the United States, when the company comes to pick it up, they get the bill to pay the tariff before it leaves the gate. Okay, another big thing, we're talking about inflation. So the inflation this month is 2.7%. Well, they don't, like Paul Harvey goes, they don't tell you the rest of the story. Oh, inflation is really good. It's up a little bit, 2.7. The goal is to keep it at 2% or lower, excuse me. Okay? You can go, oh, 2%, no big deal. Yeah, it's pretty good. You know, but when it gets up to the 3s and 4s, you know, we may have to worry. Okay, give you an example of what inflation is. So if 5 years ago, there was a $1,000 refrigerator at Home Depot's or Manny's or Lowe's, and it was 2.7% a year. And then you go, yep, I'm ready to buy that refrigerator. Well, 2.7% a year doesn't seem like much until you do the math. That same refrigerator that was 5 years ago, you waited and made up to save, will now cost you $1,142. Because inflation always goes on the last one, and it goes on and on and on. It adds up. Oh, so you know what? You say, oh, that refrigerator costs $1,000. I am going to put money away until I get my $1,000 to buy that refrigerator. Well, in 5 years of putting money away, that $1,000, because inflation devaluates your money, your $1,000 now has the buying power of $852. So if you take money and you put it in the mattress and hope for it, you lose. So, back in around 2021, when inflation was over 9%, just think if grandma had $20,000 stuffed in her mattress, after that year, she only had $18,200 of buying power. And then the next year was 5.8. Again. So in 2 years of that money, that $20,000 sitting in grandma's mattress, it lost 15% or $3,000 in value. In case you didn't hear it, but if you haven't heard it, you probably don't want to hear it. As of today, the U.S. Treasury announced today in its daily finance report that the United States debt crossed the $37 trillion mark. And let me see what they have right here. Come on. That's the official treasury. Okay. United States has $37 trillion. In debt. Where is that money going to come from? The only way the United States can get out of debt is hoping that inflation goes up. So a lot of stuff with the big, beautiful bill and everything is all set to happen after next November's elections. And after that, Trump and some of the other ones, they don't have nothing to worry about because they're gone. It's someone else's problem. In January 2020, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that the gross federal debt would not surpass $37 trillion until after fiscal year 2030. So we're $37 trillion 5 years ahead of time. Fiscal policy experts warn that the consequences are far-reaching. Michael Peterson of the Peter Peterson Foundation realizes and wants to tell people, but no one wants to, that the borrowing will cause interest rates, particularly for households and businesses, while crowding out key federal priorities. If we're spending over $1 trillion in interest, and that interest has to be paid first, where is there going to be money to come up with new things? So if we have interest going up we have Medicare going up, and we have Social Security going up. Okay. I don't know what generation comes after the baby boomers. Those are the ones that were born in around 64, 65. A lot of people retire at 62. A lot of that generation is going to start retiring and start collecting Social Security. Yeah, they can get Medicare until 65. Okay. So really, when it comes down to looking at this and how do we cut money to help pay for the debt, the interest on the debt, not pay for the debt, just interest on the debt. All those costs are going up. Military and forever wars are going up. It's simple. It comes down to Medicaid and food stamps. They have to be cut to pay for the debt, the interest on the debt. They can tell you no, 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 but and let's look at this. The U.S. hit 34 trillion in January of 2024. 35 trillion in July of 2024. 36 trillion in November. Meaning each trillion had been added roughly every 5 months. According to the Joint Economic Committee, another $1 trillion will be added in 173 days. September, October, November, December, that's 122. Today's 18, that's 140. January. So around February 3rd, we'll be up to 38 trillion. And so the foreign countries, even companies who want to buy treasury debt, are going to say, you know what? 4% isn't enough. We want more. If I'm buying the 10-year bond, there's a good chance that the inflation in the United States is going to go up. So I may want 5, 6%. Well, the president talks about the prime interest rate. Okay, that doesn't really make a big impact. It may make it makes an impact on your credit card. So yeah, they drop it 1 percentage point. So now instead of you paying 30% on your credit card, you pay 29% on your credit card. Doesn't really make a difference. And that lower interest rate is only on new charges, not old charges. And so here's another thing when we go back to inflation. So I want to buy a $30,000 car from Japan. Well, $30,000 is a pretty cheap car. So if I buy a $30,000 car from Japan and it's a 15% tariff, so now that car is $34,500. Toyota isn't going to eat all that money, and the people who are trying to sell the car is not going to eat that money, because if I'm a Toyota dealership trying to sell that car, that if I eat any of that tariff, it comes out of my profit. Then you go, wow, ooh. So, but here's another catch. some states charge you sales tax on buying a car. So if the car goes up $4,500 and you're in a place like California that charges you 8%, so now you got to pay about $325 extra on that car because of sales tax. Oh, yes. By the way, now it's not a $30,000 car, it's a $34,500 car. So now you have to pay more money for your insurance because it's a costlier car. It's like, oh crap, no one talks about that. But that is kind of some of the things that tariffs do. So again, if you live in a state that has a sales tax and the price of goods go up because of tariffs, the secondary effect is that you're going to pay more sales tax. I haven't heard anybody talk about that. Have you noticed a big difference in Keene and the local areas this summer? You're probably not really paying too much attention to it, but I haven't seen a single car this year from Nova Scotia. I used to see a few cars from Prince Edward Island. We had a bunch from Nova Scotia, Quebec, Ottawa. Not too many of those cars. They have done, the president has caused so much hate and discontent. The Canadians are going to Mexico. The Canadians are going to Ireland. Well, if you have businesses in northern New Hampshire, Hampton Beach, the Maine, we spent a week up in Maine about 3 weeks ago next to a Guntwin. There was very few Canadians up there. Okay. And they were saying that Canadians spend over $20 billion in America each year. Canadian airline, the American Airlines and everything, they've said over 7% less people are flying. And it seems kind of like Americans don't seem to have too much of a problem going up to Canada, but Canadians have a big problem coming to the United States, which goes in, nothing happens in a vacuum. So you're not thinking much of it, but Canadians are not coming to Keene, not staying in hotels in Keene, not going Hannah Grimes or getting places. Okay. That means some business in Keene will have less profit. People in Hampton Beach and places in Maine are having serious things. So people can lose their jobs. People can lose other stuff because they no longer make the income that they normally would do and made purchases and investments based on that expected income. And it just isn't happening. and people are paying the price. A lot of people are getting hurt. But we have to count on countries like Germany, countries like Saudi Arabia, China, and Japan to bail us out and buy our bonds so the federal government can still go into debt by over $2 trillion a year. And the big, beautiful bill has not even taken place. And no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and some of these other things. If you qualify, if you read the fine print, brakes on Social Security, oh, they're in here for this election, but they end at the next presidential election. At times, don't you feel like you're getting screwed? Don't you feel like they think we're idiots? Don't you feel like just because we got an R or a D, that's the only way we're going to vote? Why can't we admit that when it comes to people running for elected office, we have some of the least qualified people to be in leadership positions? And the only way out right now is to stop listening and stop buying things you do not need.